Very good evening to all of you.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening. So, what was the topic that we're discussing in our last class? Exactly, if someone of you can tell me. So, were we discussing about the Vedic era, in fact? Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
So, what is the topic that we're discussing in last class?
So we discussed Ashwamedh Yagya and the rituals done by kings.
Okay, so that was a topic that we're discussing in the context of the later Vedic text, or later Vedic era, in fact, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
today we have to proceed from there, in fact. All right. See, all right. So, trying to recollect what we did in the last class itself, and then we'll proceed further. Uh, See, I explained to all of you in my last class about the Vedic and in fact, early Vedic and the later Vedic period, and we actually also tried to compare the political aspects about both the eras, that is, early and later Vedic period. I discussed with all of you that how the so-called concept of monarchy started becoming very stronger by the time of the later Vedic period, because we see the so-called Rajan as the term was used in the early Vedic text. Now, in the later Vedic text, the same word Rajan was changed into Samrat. So, definitely, which actually indicates that at one hand, the monarch became very powerful because of this particular word called Samrat. We can actually infer that definitely the monarchy became very powerful by the time of later Vedic era. And secondly, we can also understand that this monarchy was not only powerful, rather uh, it was equally, uh, in fact, becoming quite ambitious in terms of expanding the areas, because the polity of later Vedic period, in fact, brought huge or like remarkable changes in the Indian subcontinent at a particular point of time. Because we see the reference of the word called Janpad. Now, Janpad actually has been a frequent word used in the later Vedic period only. So, in the early Vedic term or early Vedic age, what we see that the word called Jana or Jan was largely used, in fact. But by the time of the later Vedic period, we see the word called Janpad has been frequently used by the different later Vedic texts. All right. So it indicates, or it is indicative of that some sort of permanent settlement of the tribes got established by the time of the later Vedic phase itself. So I told you earlier that in the Rig Vedic era or the early Vedic era, the tribes or the tribal population were quite mobile. So they didn't have any permanent, you can say, area to settle down. So they kept on moving from one region to another region. That's what actually was their normal movement. They were basically nomadic in that way. Whereas by the time of later Vedic phase, they became the people of sedentary lifestyle. So actually, we see that they started finally occupying a particular territory, and their territory used to be known by the name of the kings of those old tribes. In fact, in later Vedic phase itself. So therefore, in the context of that only, we have to see the concept of Janpad had started emerging by the time of later Vedic phase. And this Janpad was something in the context of the identification of a land for a permanent settlement of people out there in the later Vedic era itself. Fine. That is one thing that we see in the later Vedic phase. The later Vedic phase also, we also see the term called Nagara also started emerging. So this Nagara also indicates that some sort of, you can say, exchange of goods, some sort of the, as you can say, trade and commerce also may have started by the time of the Vedic era itself. All right. However, we don't have the evidence of the coins of this particular era, I mean, till 600 BCE, in fact. But definitely the word called Nishk or Nishak. So Nishk or Nishak was a word used frequently in the Rig Veda and also later Vedic era itself. All right. So Nishk may have been a term called a term for the currency of the coin, which may have been in use in the particular era of, you can say, Vedic period itself. Fine. But nevertheless, the idea is the word Nagara indicated that there was some emergence of commercial towns, the commercial cities, commercial areas that was seen in the time of during the time of later Vedic era itself. And the examples like Hastinapur, Kausambi, they are considered to be the remarkable sites that we have discovered that belongs to the era of later Vedic period itself. That is how we see the emergence of the political system on a quite robust footing by the time of the later Vedic phase itself. That is the significance of the political achievement of later Vedic era itself. And then we also see that this political, you can say, system got concretized in favor of the monarchy only because the so-called Sabha and Samiti, which used to play a very important role by the time of, you can say, the period of the early Vedic era. Now, the Sabha and Samiti, they lost their significance the way it was enjoying the significance in the early Vedic period. All right. So we see that the importance of Sabha and Samiti had almost got disappeared and almost got, I mean, reduced. And of course, the Vidat and gun war were completely disappeared by the time of the later Vedic phase itself, indicating towards that all the powers were started being concentrated into the hand of the monarchy only. So monarchy was becoming extremely powerful, and exactly why I have just told you about the concept of samrat that was used. And in this context only, we also see some various important sacrifices like Vajpayee, Rajasuya. These sacrifices became the important rituals of a monarchy in the later Vedic period itself. Fine. That is how you see the political organization started changing in favor of the monarchy only. Then we also see that there was a very well established, you can say, nexus between the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas, because we already seen that the existence of the four Varnas was already there in the later part of the early Vedic phase itself. I told you about the mandala number 10. All right. There itself, the idea of the four Varna system got existed in India, that is Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. So this Brahman Kshatriya alliance was quite visible by the time of later Vedic society or later Vedic phase itself, especially in the context of the Brahmins. They started supporting the Kshatriyas. In fact, they started legitimizing the rule of the Kshatriyas, and the rulers actually started being you can say, identified as the Kshatriyas, as the fighters, as the protector of their tribes. That is how the so-called class of Kshatriya or the caste of Kshatriya also started emerging by the time of later Vedic phase itself on a very sound footing. Fine. And here we see that there has been a very well established, you can say, nexus or alliance between Brahman and Kshatriya to dominate over the society. And of course, in all their sacrifices and rituals, either the Brahmins, they were actually getting the benefit due to or because of the Kshatriya being the ruler in their territory, in their areas, in fact. Okay. That is how the Kshatriya Brahman alliance can be seen at that particular point of time. Fine. Then, of course, we have various, I mean, writings or scriptures which also talk about this particular alliance was well established, like Atre Brahman. Now, Atre Brahman very clearly mentions about that how the Brahmins were given the gold and also the other, you can say, essential items for the appointment or anointment of the king outside there, in fact. All right. So the king used to get legitimacy through the Brahmins, and the Brahmins used to provide legitimacy after receiving the so-called dan and dakshina by this particular time. Very importantly, that become a part of rituals at this particular point of time. Very comprehensive ritual out there in entire, you can say, later Vedic age itself. Fine. So this is how you see the emergence of the so-called the monarchy and so-called even the monarchy and the Brahman alliance started emerging at a very sound footing in this point of time. Fine. Then society. The society also you can see here. The society I already told you that society was already divided to four varnas, and this varnas got established, well established by the time of the later Vedic phase itself. Okay. In this particular system, the four varna system became quite rigid in the time of the later Vedic phase itself. When we say rigid, it also means it started following certain practices which used to make them, you can say, in isolation from the others, especially like let's say the system of Gotra for marriages. So of course, in this manner, they started preferring a very high degree of isolation from the other caste altogether, and that is how it started becoming quite rigid by the time of the Vedic phase itself. And most importantly, they also started following the concept of the Dvija, that is twice born, in which the Upnayan ceremony became the very important ceremony, a very important ritual that was preferably done only by the upper caste or upper section of society, mainly by the Brahmins and Kshatriyas. Even Vaishyas were also allowed, but Sudras were never allowed to go for Upnayan. So what is Upnayan? Upnayan was a practice of wearing the sacred thread. All right. So that is how you see. This is how the division started becoming very very explicit by the time of the later Vedic phase itself. Last but not the least, also the so-called fourth Varna, that is the Shudras, were denied all these privileges of going for Upnayan and also going for the Gayatri Mantra or reciting Gayatri Mantra altogether. So I already told you that not only Shudras were denied, but even women were also denied to go for Upnayan and Gayatri Mantra. So in that manner, you can say the society became highly divisible, or rather, it was highly, you can say, divisive. In fact, in terms of their approach, in terms of the following the rituals as well at that particular point of time. And one of the rituals was absolutely very important for them. That was Gotra system. You see, Gotra system also became highly important practice in the later Vedic phase itself, which means Gotra means cow pain. So it was basically a concept under which that a group of people, they used to trace their origin from a common ancestor. The common ancestor through whom, through which they have been, let's say, deriving the milk from a particular cow, and that is how they used to actually, identify themselves with a particular cow, with a particular clan in that way. So Gotra system acquired immense importance by the time of the later Vedic phase itself. So in that way, the marriages were also not allowed. In fact, it was not allowed. In fact, in the same Gotra, that is how the marriage system also started becoming quite rigid at that particular point of time in that particular manner. Fine. So this is one thing that happened in the later Vedic phase itself. Secondly, ashram system. Now see, ashram system also got developed in later Vedic phase. Will established in fact later Vedic phase itself. Now what was ashram system? See, ashram system was basically the reference about the four stages of life. Now, this four stages of life emerged in the later Vedic phase, but it was not well established in this particular time. What do you mean by that? It simply means in the four stages of life, there are four stages like, let's say, brahmacharya, grihast, vanaprasth, and sannyas. Now, this brahmacharya is a phase or to maintain celibacy and to learn education and to get education. That is what actually is the phase of brahmacharya. Grihast is the married life, and vanaprasth was the life of seclusion, in fact. Vanaprasth was the life of seclusion, that is away from the so-called married life, and the sannyas was completely abandoning the worldly life altogether. So that was the four phases of the ashram system. However, in the later Vedic era, only three phases of ashram system got established. The sannyas as a concept had come into existence only in the post-Vedic phase, not in the later Vedic phase. So this question can be asked to you in prelims. All right, so you have to remember about it that the four stages of life in the ashram system were not well established in the later Vedic phase. Rather, it got well established only in the post-Vedic phase, which means after Vedic era. All right, that is the point. Fine. Then, position of women, I have already explained to you that status of women, at least in the early Vedic time, was relatively better than what was, or rather what they used to enjoy in the later Vedic phase. All right, but it does not mean that the early or Vedic period were treating the women in a very, you can say, high esteem or rather high order. So even at that particular point of time, the the Vedic hymns or the Greek Vedic hymns, they used to only recite in the name of having more and more wealth, more and more cattle, and more and more sons. So, in the name of wealth, cattle, that's gold, cattle, and sons. In that particular, I mean, for demanding these all three things only, the entire Vedic hymns were also written, or the hymns were also recited. So that is how it is. It is very much visible that what kind of position was there of women. But relatively, their conditions were better than the later Vedic phase, because at least at this particular point of time, the women were allowed to profess education. We were also allowed to participate in the rituals. All right, and by the time of later Vedic phase, these all advantages for women were denied completely. These all advantages were denied to women completely. Neither they were allowed to participate in the rituals, nor even they were given the proper education by the time of later Vedic phase. Now, that is what we can simply understand, that when the aspect of property, when the aspect of land as a property started becoming very concrete idea in the society, women distribution increased tremendously. So that the land as a property can only be distributed among the sons, not among the daughters. That is how the system started becoming highly unfavorable for women in India gradually. Fine. Then we can see the kind of religion rituals that was followed in that particular point of time. So the people out there in the Vedic era, especially early Vedic era, they were the worshippers of mainly the gods like Agni and Indra. However, by the time of the later Vedic phase, the Agni and Indra lost their importance, and it was Prajapati which became the main deity. So Prajapati became the main deity, which is understood to be the you can say conceiver of universe in the form of Brahmaji. So Prajapati was identified as Brahmaji later on. So Prajapati became the main deity, and Rudra, that is the god of rituals, identified with Shiva later on. They also become, and this god also become important in the time of the later Vedic phase itself. So in later Vedic phase, we see the emergence of some new gods, that is Prajapati, Rudra, at that particular point of time. Because Satpat Brahman also lists the names of Rudra as Pasum Paripati, Sarva, Bhava, Bahikas, Vishnu. So these all names, with Bahikas, these all names were given to Rudra only in Satpat Brahman. Simply, even Vishnu was also considered as protector of people. All right. However, there's no any reference to Vishnu's incarnations at that particular point of time. So incarnations of Vishnu came up quite late, only during the time of the Gupta's period in India. Fine, that is the story of Vishnu's incarnations. Now, coming to the other aspect of the religion rituals, so obviously you see the Upanishads, they actually started even questioning the so-called the rituals, which was completely based upon the unscientific basis. So therefore, Upanishads are considered to be the great source of philosophy that actually started also talking about some logical way of worshipping, logical way of following the rituals for the first time ever. But Upanishads are considered to be the documents of the later Vedic phase, which were written towards the end of the Vedic phase only. Therefore, Upanishads are also identified as Vedanta, Vedantic philosophy by various scholars in India. Fine. So you can see here the Upanishads simply means that the philosophical inquiries were composed during this period, but many of them were also composed after that. All right. Therefore, it is referred as Vedanta, and since they're attached to the last part of Vedic text itself, that's the reason why it is also called as Vedanta. So Satyameva Jayate is a very famous quote that is also used by the government of India. It is taken from the Mundak Upanishad. It is not Mudak, it is Mundak, M-U-N. All right, so Satyameva Jayate has been taken from the Mundak Upanishad itself. Fine. Now, this is how we have to see the transition phase of the Vedic era to post-Vedic era. Let's now get into the post-Vedic era now. Now see, on your screen, see how the transformation started changing, taking place. You can see on the screen in 1500 to 1000 BCE, this was the era of Rig Veda. All right, you can see on the screen very clearly. This is the era of Rig Veda, and in this era of Rig Vedic period, we see the emergence of jana as a concept. Fine. So jana emerged where in Rig Vedic period, because we have a reference of jana more than 200 times in Rig Vedic hymn. What was jana? I hope you are able to see the screen. No.
So the slide is on post-Vedic era of Buddha.
Okay, just a moment. Just a moment. Now,
Yes, sir, it's visible
okay.
now.
So now you can see on the screen. This is what I was talking about. That in the Rig Vedic period, we see the emergence of the word called jana frequently. Now, this jana in the Rig Vedic period has been identified as a tribe. Tribe. Tribe was basically a group of similar people. They were known as tribe like this way. All right. So Jana was tribe here, and they were mobile. They didn't have any permanent settlement. So they were moving from one place to another place. So therefore, we don't have much of the evidences in the context of archaeological evidences the available of the Rig Vedic period in India. Fine. Then you see with the passage of time, when you enter into Later Vedic period, that is somewhere around 1000 BCE, we see the same Jana has become Janpad. Now, when you attach Jana with territory, that is territory is called as Pad. All right. So when you attach Jana with permanent territory, it means that they started having a permanent settlement towards the end of Rig Vedic period itself. So permanent settlement also started happening or taking shape in the tribal population of the Rig Vedic era, and they turned out to be Janpad. So Janpad emerged in the Later Vedic era itself. So various Janpadas emerged in this particular period, that is between 1000 BCE to 600 BCE itself. All right. And I told you already that Janpad was something in the context of having a permanent place for the tribes to live on. All right. And here you can see that is the concept of political concept of a political system of the Vedic era also started changing in the context of monarchy, became quite stronger here. Monarchy became Samrat here by the time of Later Vedic phase itself. All right. That is how we see the emergence of political system in India. Then by the time of 600 BCE itself. So 600 BCE is a major epoch of the Indian history. Now, why it's a major epoch of Indian history? Reason being, in this particular period, various changes took place in India. Changes ranging from the political system to the social, to economic, to even the cultural and ideological system. Various changes and transformations took place in India simultaneously from 600 BC onwards. Why and how? Let us see that. See, the point is that by the time of later Vedic phase, not only the Nagara emerged, but also the some amount of trade commerce also started taking shape. All right. It is believed that largely by the time of later Vedic phase, the trade and commerce was conducted in India in the barter system only. So largely it was conducted in the barter system. However, a word called nishak or nishk. Now, nishk has been identified as either gold coin or gold jewelry. All right. So, however, a word called nishak has been mentioned frequently in the Vedic text, which, according to some historians, they were largely the gold jewelry. But there could be also possibility that some sort of, you can say, exchange was also taking place in lieu of or in exchange of the gold coins as well. Fine. So that is how Bishak has been understood to be. So nevertheless, the point is that there was an existence of trade and commerce. There was an existence of the various, you can say, the activities which were beyond the pure agricultural activities. In other words, people were involved in the art and craft business also. So artisans, craftsmen, now they also started emerging by the time of later Vedic phase itself. All right. So in later Vedic phase, what do we notice? We notice that the artisans and craftsmen and their occupation, their profession had emerged as a major profession occupation by this particular point of time. For example, Rathakaras. The Rathakaras happen to be the you can say the horse chariot maker. The Rathakaras were the horse chariot makers. And can you understand that Rathakaras, being the horse chariot makers, they were also a part of the so-called the Sudra community. They were part of the Sudra community only, but only Rathakaras were allowed to go for Upanayan, allowed to wear the sacred thread from the Sudra community. All right. No, it is precisely that they were quite useful for the kings, quite useful for the system that was there. All right. So entire, you can say, the wars or so-called the conflicts or any sort of, you can say, distance traveling was done only through the chariots constructed by the Rathakaras only. So probably because of that only, obviously the Rathakas were quite influential at that particular point of time, and therefore they may have been allowed to wear sacred thread also by the upper Varda in this system. Fine. So the point was that artisans and craftsmen, they had already emerged as a robust profession by the time of later Vedic phase itself. Therefore, when you see the emergence of the non-agricultural activities, it will also lead to a boost, or it will also give a boost to the so-called the urbanization in India. So the process of urbanization started taking shape towards the end of the later Vedic phase itself. We have just seen the emergence of Nagara. What is Nagar? Nagar is that is something beyond village, something other than the village. That is Nagar. So Nagara concept got immersed by this particular point of time. Fine. And on that basis only, we see that the materialism in the society started taking shape. Materialism in the context of that the some of the business people or businessmen, they started earning huge revenue or huge money, huge wealth also. And because of that, even in the business community, they started constructing or constituting a concept of a guild system. Guild, Guild, all right, so, which was called as Sesti or Sarthavaha. Sesti or Sarthavaha, that was the head of the guild. So they were called as guilds of traders. They are the chief of the guild, chief merchant. So emergence of Srestri and Sarthavaha were also seen in the context of this particular period of towards the end of the later Vedic phase itself. All right. So these all changes started taking shape in the later Vedic phase itself. So you can see even from economic perspective, the changes were quite visible. From social perspective, the dominance of the Brahmins and Kshatriyas was still quite robust. And not only that, but the practice of the Dan and Dakshina. The Dan and Dakshina is very important for the Brahmin, you can say, people out there. So see, I mean, you need to understand what is the concept of Dan and Dakshina. See, that was something that you have to give. You have to give as a sort of a, it's a voluntarily gift to the so-called Brahmin community. Dakshina was something that you had to give in the context of the service that you used to take from the Brahmin community. So whatever you used to pay to the Brahmin community is to be considered as part of the Dan and Dakshina for them. So this practice of Dan and Dakshina got very much well established in the system in the entire society. And any ritual could not have been performed without the involvement of the Brahmins out there. And if the rituals are not performed properly, being from any particular community and any caste, then you are not going to get your moksha or solace from your life. So that sort of concept, that sort of, you can say, system was developed. Rather, it had got highly inbuilt in the society itself by the time of the later Vedic phase itself. So in nutshell, the idea was society was highly divisive. Secondly, there was a hegemony in the society by the Brahmins and Kshatriyas largely. Thirdly, that rituals and all the other religious, you can say, affairs could not have been performed without the involvement of the Brahmins and their mantras. Fine. Fourthly, that there were some people like Vaishyas who started becoming economically prosperous due to the trade and commerce and commercial activities. But even they were not treated equally in the society. So economically, they may have got privileged. They may have got, let's say, better off, but in the social privileges was not were denied to them. Not only social privilege, but also the religious privileges were denied to them outrightly. So in that manner, even the Vaishyas were not satisfied with this political social order, despite the fact they were becoming economically better off due to the increase in the trade and commercial activities across the Indian subcontinent, particularly in Indian mainland in that way. So in this manner, you see the social cultural changes were also witnessing at that particular point of time, apart from economic and political changes. But largely, we have to see these all changes from the garb of or under the garb of the political changes. Now, see, by the time of 600 BCE, there were emergence of Mahajanpadas in North India. Mahajanpadas. This Mahajanpadas, as the name itself will indicate you, it is something that is bigger than the Janpada. It is a concept bigger than the Janpada, so they were already Janpad emerged. But by the time of 600 BCE, Mahajanpadas also emerged in India. And when we say Mahajanpadas, you can simply understand it is just like a small province. It is just like a small province. So almost like a provincial government, provincial territory started emerging in India by the time of 600 BCE itself. That was a major change, political change, as far as Indian subcontinent is concerned at that point of time. According to various texts like Anguttara Nikaya, Mahavatsu, these are texts of Buddhism. Now, one thing you have to now keep in mind, the way we are quite rich in the context of later Vedic texts to narrate the story of entire later Vedic phase or era. I have already discussed with all of you that we have the text like Samved, Yajurved, Atharvaved, Brahmanas, Anaryas, Upanishads, etc. to narrate or to reconstruct the history of later Vedic era in India. Similarly, from 600 BC onwards, we are rich in the context of the Buddhist texts, which gives us the entire information from this era onwards. So I was telling to all of you that it was Buddhist texts like Anguttara Nikaya, Mahavatsu. Now these are Buddhist texts which talk about that around 6th century BCE there were 16 Mahajanpadas in India. 16 Mahajanpadas in India. And what were these Mahajanpadas? These Mahajanpadas were the provincial form of governments being ruled by one or the other monarchs. So in nutshell, at least in entire north and northwestern India, in the 6th century BCE, we have the evidences of existence of 16 Mahajanpadas across the entire Indian subcontinent, according to what we get it from the Buddhist scripture. Fine. What were the 16 Mahajanpadas? Let us see on your screen now. See the 16 Mahajanpadas, out of 16 Mahajanpadas, the most important Mahajanpada happened to be Magad Mahajanpada. Alright, so you can see here, according to the Puranic, Buddhist and Jain traditions, there were 16 Mahajanpadas like Gandhara, Kamboja, Asaka, Vatsa, Avanti, Surasen, Chedi, Malla, Kuru, Panchala, Matsya, Vajji, Anga, Kasi, Kosala, and Magad. See, these 16 Mahajanpadas we come to know from these old texts, but largely from Anguttara Nikaya and Mahavatsu. Or they are the Buddhist texts. I just told you that out of the 16 Mahajanpadas, the most important Mahajanpada for all of us happened to be the Magad Mahajanpada. Because this Magad Mahajanpada, which was formed in the north part of, in the north and southern part of Bihar, or central part of Bihar, they emerged as the seat of the modern empire afterwards. So the emergence of the Mauryas can be traced from the emergence of the Magad Mahajanpadas in India. So in the 6th century BCE itself, Magad had emerged as a major Mahajanpada. The point is that who were the people of Magad? According to the legends of Mahabharata, Jarasandh. Now, Jarasandh was the ruler in the Magad area. Alright. And of course, since there only in Magad, there was the existence of some of the other dynasties, in fact. Fine. But with the passage of time, we see there were various other dynasties started emerging in Magad by the 6th century BCE. So by the 6th century BCE, we see the emergence of various kind of dynasties in the Magad Janpadas. See on the screen. See, Mahajanpadas have been classified into two types. One was monarchy, which we see in the context of the emergence of the Magadhan Empire or the Magadhan dynasty or the Magadhan kingdom. Second one was Gan Sanghas. Gan Sanghas was a typical characteristic of the 6th century BCE India, because India, or we claim that we were the earliest in the world to teach the concept of the republican form of government to the world. Because Gan Sanghas was basically republic or republican form of government. In other words, Gan Sangha was a political system that got developed in the Tarai of Himalayas, in the southern part of Himalayas, and under this political system, the ruler was elected, the king was elected among the chieftains. So the king used to get elected among the chieftains. So there was no any inherent concept of the transfer of kingship to the sons or to the relatives of kings directly. So in monarchy, what do we see? In monarchy, there's a concept of the transfer of the power into the hand of the sons only, which was not in the case of Gansanghas. It was a principle of primus inter pares. That is how even Indian Prime Minister is also elected or selected in that way. Primus inter pares means first among equals. So this primus inter pares as a philosophy was guiding principle of the concept of Gansanghas. So it was based upon the philosophy or the principle of primus inter pares. In other words, the chieftains used to elect their kings. So they used to elect their kings in Gansanghas. And the most interesting fact for all of you that Buddha belonged to the same Gansangha. So Buddha was a person from the Gansangha only. All right, and that is how Buddha, I mean, of course, was trained or rather had have first experience about the Gansanghas and functioning, in fact, altogether. But the point is that the Gansanghas, they were also having one limitation that they were inward looking, having inward looking approach. They were having inward looking approach. Now, what was inward looking approach? First of all, these Gansanghas were mainly membered by Kshatriyas clan only. So only Kshatriyas clan were allowed to be part of this Gansanghas. That's the one thing. Secondly, no outside marriage were allowed. No outside marriage were allowed in these Gansanghas. Fine, that's another inward looking approach. Thirdly, they were not involved in the any surplus production of crops for the commercialization of agriculture in that particular manner. So there was no interest of commercialization of agriculture for them, no surplus production for them. So they believed in subsistence farming only. So therefore there was no any process of commercialization in them. Therefore the interesting fact about India's 6th century BCE happened to be that none of the city was existing in the Gansanghas areas. Not a single city, not a single urban area, urban nagara, the so-called nagara, was there in the Gansanghas area. It proves the fact that they were completely based upon the subsistence farming. They were not the people to promote trade and commerce. So therefore, when in this model, in this economic model, they had to exist. So the economic model was quite inward looking, quite inward looking. And parallel to Gansanghas, we also have the monarchical form of government. Monarchical form of government like Magadha, Anga, Kosala, etc. So they all were the monarchical form of government. And out of this monarchical form of government, especially Magad, Magad was an area which was known for trade and commerce only, which was known for promotion of trade and commerce only. So definitely Magad had to come under in the conflict of these Gansanghas, especially the Gansanghas from where Buddha used to belong. It was the Vajji Gansangha. So Buddha was from Vajji Gansangha. All right. So exactly with this particular, I mean, Gansangya, that is also called as Sakya clan, within the Vajji Gansanga, Buddha was having a, sorry, Bhagat was having a conflict with this particular Vajji Gansanga directly. Why? Because they were not allowing the trade and commerce to proliferate. Most importantly, they were just on the northern frontier of Magad. So any trade and commerce from the northern frontier of Magad could not cross through very easily in a hassle-free manner. They used to get disturbed. They used to get disturbed by the locals. So locals used to disturb the trade and commerce of the Magadhas. So in this manner, we can see that the local Vajji people, they were disturbing the trade and commerce of the Magadhan people. And there has been an instance. For example, I give you one instance. Now, in one of the instances, Ajat Satru, who happened to be one of the most powerful kings of the Magadhan Empire or Magadhan Kingdom, Ajat Satru has had a problem with these Vajjis. Ajat Satru wanted to take some tips from Buddha because both Ajat Satru and even his father, Bimbisar, who was the founder of Haryak dynasty, both were contemporary to Lord Buddha. Bimbisar happened to also meet Lord Buddha, which Ajatasattu could not do. Now see, Ajatasattu wanted to eliminate these Vajjis altogether. Because of these all problems it was creating for them. So Ajatasattu wanted to know about what is the strength of the Vajjis. So he sent his own ambassador, his own minister, Vasakar. Vasakar was the name of the minister of Ajatasattu who was sent to have an audience of Lord Buddha. Now, Lord Buddha by that point of time had already emerged as a local figure, especially in the region of Bihar and Eastern UP. So he had already attained importance, or rather attained the so-called, you can say, glory, especially in this pocket. So he became a popular figure by that point of time itself. All right. So he sent Vasakar to ask Lord Buddha that why and how can, in what manner Magadh can destroy the Vajji clan. So Vasakar happened to visit, or rather it is said that Vasakar visited Lord Buddha's ashram. And here Lord Buddha was doing meditation, so he could not give the audience directly to Vasakar. Vasakar had to wait for a long period of time. Since morning till evening he waited before Lord Buddha opened his, or rather came out from his meditation. He was in deep meditation. Then the moment he saw Vasakar, he understood what Vasakar has come for what purpose he has come for. He simply uttered only word, only single sentence to Vasakar, and then he left from there. That was the purpose for which you have come over here. He said that the strength of these people are also their weakness. And then Lord Buddha moved. It is said that Vasakar came back to Magad, the capital of Magad at that particular point of time was Rajgiri. So it is said that he came back to Rajgiri or Rajgir of today's era, and here he told Ajatasattu that this is what actually has been told to him by Lord Buddha. Ajatasattu was a sharp man. He understood what Lord Buddha's message was there for him. He got to know that, okay, the strength of the Vajjis was their unity, because they are these chieftains united on a common lineage. They all were smaller chieftains, they all were united with a common lineage. So if we are able to destroy and disturb that common lineage, we can destroy entire Vajji. And here he was successful in breaking down the Vajji confederacy to large extent. So see, this is what was the conflict. And under this conflict, Magad emerged as the most powerful kingdom. Because Magad started expanding towards north, towards east, and also towards west. Now towards east, Anga was there, which is today's modern Bhagalpur in Bihar. It was equally a powerful kingdom, but it was defeated by Ajat-Satru. And not only that, but he also started expanding his you can say domain or territory towards Kasi, that is today's Varanasi, in that particular manner. So till Varanasi he expanded. All right. He also had a good ties with Avanti kings. So this is how you see Ajat-Satru had already established a very well established empire or a well established kingdom in Magad. And Ajat-Satru is also said to have invented some new types of technologies of warfare. New types of technologies of warfare, which you may have seen in the movie called Bahubali. In Bahubali movie, the same techniques which was used by Ajat-Satru has been depicted. For example, if you have seen in Bahubali that Musal Kantak, what is Musal Kantak? It was basically in the context of, if you remember, in Bahubali movie, they have shown you that big boulders of stone were used as a catapult. All right. So this big boulder of stone was used as a catapult. That was a method invented by Ajat-Satru for the first time. Fine. Not only that, but even another very important machine that was shown in the movie called Bahubali. That machine was that where you see the chariot was attached with maces, blades. If you remember movie Bahubali, you probably would be able to recollect it. So there has been a depiction of the big chariots, and on the side of the chariots there was an attached maces, that is blades. So the movement of chariots with a speed, the blades used to circulate due to coming to contact with the air. So this blade used to circulate in such a high speed that it used to cut down all the enemies in nearby area. Now see, this was a technique that was invented only by Ajat-Satru. Fine. So these two techniques which have been shown even in the movie called Bahubali was initially an invention of Ajat-Satru in India or rather in the world. Fine. So this is how he established a strong, very strong kingdom in the form of Magad. Fine. That was a success of Ajat-Satru in fact. Fine. So see, this is how the entire system of Mahajanpadas came in favor of the Magadhan kingdom. So finally, Magad emerged as the most strongest Mahajanpada. And why did it emerge as the most strongest Mahajanpada? There were reasons behind that. First of all, the first reason was that Magad was bestowed with some very powerful and able kings. Right from Bimbisar, who is said to have been the founder of the Haryak dynasty, to Ajat-Satru, even Kalasok, even Mahapadmanand. Now, they all happen to be highly ambitious rulers. Highly ambitious rulers. And precisely because of that only, by the time of you can say the Nanda dynasty, especially under Mahapadmanand, Magad kingdom has transformed into as an empire. So Magad had already transformed into an empire. by the time of even Mahapadmanand. Fine. And when Chandragupta Maurya, he came into picture, he already inherited a very strong Magadhan empire, which he renamed, or rather he started calling it as a part of modern empire. So the Mauryas got the advantage of establishing a first big empire in India. It is all due to the emergence of Magad as the most dominant kingdom and empire by the time of Mahapadmanand. Now you can see on your screen, I'm sharing the screen with all of you again. Now see, I explained to you this idea that political system in the 6th century BC was like, in what sense? There were two kind of political system. One was Gansanghas, another one was Mahajanpadas. Now Gansanghas were the people who were living in the foothills of Himalayas. They were basically clan-based oligarchies, said to be the initial founder of the republican form of government. It was based upon the consensus of the members to form the government. Primus inter pares philosophy was being followed by them. Sakya clan was there in the Likshmi area, or which is also called Vajji Confederacy basically. So Vajji Confederacy, Likshmi are same. Alright. So Likshmi and Vajji Confederacy are same. Likshmi today is the modern Vaisali of Bihar. Fine. So you can see here they were having the community ownership of land. Agriculture was the predominant occupation. Art and craft was not promoted by them. There was no urban centers also in the Gansanghas. On the other hand, in the Mahajanpadas under monarchy, which was formed largely in the Ganga Yamuna Valley Doab area, here out of them, the Magadhan kingdom emerged the most dominant power, because Bimbisar, who is also called as Senia, Bimbisar का नाम था सेनिया भी. Bimbisar was also called as Senia. He happened to be the founder of Hanyak dynasty, which was quite a powerful dynasty there in Magad. Bimbisar was said to have been killed by Ajatasattu, his own son, and then he acquired the throne of Magad. Ajatasattu was followed by even Udayin, and he is the same person, Udayin, who is said to have the founder of Patliputra, today's Patna. So a question might be asked to you that who was the founder of Patliputra? Who was the founder of Patliputra or modern Patna? Answer will be Udayin. And who was Udayin? He was the son of Ajatasattu. So till the time of Udayin or Ajatasattu, you can say, the capital of Magad was Rajgir. Today's Rajgiri or Rajgir. Alright. But the capital shifted to Patliputra, today's Patna, by Udayin. Fine. And then when you see Kalasok came, Kalasok shifted the capital for some time also in Vaisali. But again, when Mahapadmanand came into power of Nanda dynasty, he again re-established the capital there in Patliputra or Patna. And also in the modern time, Patliputra remained the capital of the modern empire also. Fine. That is the story of these, you can say, Mahajanpadas. So you can see here, finally, these are the techniques on which Ajatasattu was able to control the big empire or the big kingdom of Mahajanpada of Magad, in fact. I told you Mahasila Kantak and Rath Musal. They were two very innovative techniques or the weapons designed by Ajat Satru. Fine.
सर वो चैरियट वाले का नाम क्या, चैरियट वाला वेपन का नाम क्या?
Ratha Musal. That was chariot attached with maces.
सर भागलपुर वाले जनपद का नाम क्या था?
Anga. Anga.
जी सर.
All right. So Sisunag dynasty also came after the Haryak dynasty. And in Sisunag dynasty, Kalasuk was the most important ruler. He is said to have established the capital in Vaishali for some period of time. Fine. So by the time of Sisunag only, even Avanti was also captured as a part of Magadhan kingdom. Avanti, that is Ujjain of today. So now you can see how far Magad kingdom started expanding. So from North Bihar and South Bihar area of Patna, or Central Bihar area of Patna, they were having control till Ujjain by the time of Sisunag dynasty itself. Fine. Then you see Nandas came after the Sisunag dynasty. And Mahapadma Nand is said to have been the founder of the first Magadhan empire, in fact. Or rather, he is said to have the person who converted Magadhan kingdom into an empire. How and why? See, Mahapadma Nand was given a title of Ekarat. Mahapadma was having a title of Ekarat, and this person was having a huge army with him. 2 lakh infantry, 6,000 elephants, 60,000 cavalry. They were there in the army of Mahapadma Nand. The period of Mahapadma Nand coincides also with the period of the invasion of Alexander, in fact. So Alexander the Great, the Greek ruler, who started expanding his empire from Macedonia to the eastern part of Asia. So he started his campaign from Macedonia, and after winning all the areas right from Iraq, Iran to the area of even Afghanistan, so till that he was able to capture the entire area. Now after that he was supposed to cross the river Bias. So on the bank of Bias only in Punjab, his army let down the arms because of his tiredness, in fact. You may have heard about the very famous battle between Alexander and the king Porus. So that was the battle that he was able to defeat King Porus, but he fought valiantly. On that basis only, he again handed over the area of Sindh to King Porus. But afterwards, he was supposed to now launch the further campaign towards India or towards mainland India. But he came to know about the Nanda dynasty and about their huge army. Now, for Porus, it was it was an element of surprise. In fact, for Alexander, it was an element of surprise to see for the first time in their life an animal called elephant. They had never seen elephant in their life, none of the Greeks. So for the first time, they witnessed such a big animals in the warfare techniques. That was an issue of surprise element for the entire Alexander and his army. And when he came to know that Porus was having only a few handful of elephant in the army, but Nanda is having more than 6,000 elephant in the army. So that also is said to have the factor behind the lowering down the motivation of the armed forces of Alexander to cross the river Bias and to fight another war with Mahapadma Nand. So that was precisely the reason that why he let down the arms there only, and probably because of that only, he decided to go back to Macedonia, or en route only he died due to the disease struck to him. So Alexander passed away, but he appointed his own generals, military generals, as the controller and commander of this area of northwestern India. Fine, let's say Seleucus Nicator. So Seleucus Nicator was appointed as the head of the northwestern frontier area. It is said that for the first time Chandragupta Maurya happened to see Alexander the Great very closely. When he came to know about Alexander, that he has attacked, or rather he has entered to the area of Punjab and defeated Porus, he was influenced by his military acumen. It is said that Chandragupta Maurya happened to visit on this particular battlefield to observe that in what manner the battle was fought and how Alexander has been victorious over Porus. That is what actually is also a story that goes on. Fine. Now come back to the issue. Mahapadmanand was succeeded by Dhananand. So Dhananand was the last ruler who was killed by Chandragupta Maurya around 321 BCE and acquired the throne of Magad with establishing another modern empire, or the next empire, that is modern empire. So Dhananand was the common enemy of both Kautilya and Chandragupta Maurya. And in the Kautilya's own Saptanga theory, Kautilya has given Saptanga theory how to control, or how to administer the state. In Saptanga theory, Kautilya or Chanakya has mentioned, your enemy's enemy is your best friend. All right. Now, see, this is very important philosophy that still works. Your enemy's enemy is your best friend, and exactly Kautilya also was having enemy in the form of Dhananand. Because Dhananand is said to have quite arrogant person belonging to very ordinary class, especially I would say he was belonging to the Sudra class, and then he acquired the throne. I mean, of course, Mahapadmanand belonging to the Sudra class. So having a Sudra controlling the affair of Magad was already having an issue of differences between the upper class and the lower class there in Magad. And top of that, Kautilya or Chanakya, who was a learned Brahmin, now he has, of course, it is said that he was insulted in the court of Dhananand. And there only Kautilya has taken an oath to remove the Nanda dynasty from the throne itself altogether. So he happened to meet Chandragupta Maurya in Patliputra only, and then only both of them they came together to remove Dhananand and to establish the modern empire. So Kautilya played a very instrumental role in establishing of the modern empire there in Patliputra after the removal of Nanda dynasty. So Nanda dynasty was finally removed. All right, that was a story that goes on. But the point that again we have to reiterate, why only in Magad modern empire was established? Why not in Ujjain? Why not in other parts of India? Why not in any other part of India? Why only in Bihar? Why only in this particular pocket of India? See, I told you there was a history behind that, there was a reason behind that, especially in the context of the emergence of Magadhan kingdom. For example, first of all, the Magadhan kingdom was bestowed with the best of the kings of that particular era. All right, they were the skilled, you can say, people, or rather you can say were the most ablest of the kings or ablest of the rulers found in the Magadhan kingdom in that particular era. That's one thing. Secondly, Magad was always having a lot of geographical benefits. Benefits like Magad was located near to the iron deposits. According to R.S. Sarma, the great historian of India, so according to R.S. Sarma, the iron deposits happen to be the major reason behind the emergence of even the Magadha as a superior power over the rest of the kingdoms in India. Because Magad was located very near to the iron deposits of today's, that is even in Jharkhand, Chota Nagpur Plateau. Chota Nagpur Plateau. So it is near to Jharkhand, Chota Nagpur Plateau, from where the iron used to be also explored and exploited at even that particular point of time. Fine, that was the first factor of why even Anga was captured. क्योंकि अंगा बीच में आता था, रास्ते के बीच में आता था, तो कैप्चर कर लिया ताकि आसानी से हम आयरन डिपॉजिट्स को एक्सप्लॉइट कर पाए. That was the second factor why it emerged as a major power. Third factor was their capital, Grivraj or Rajgri. Both are same. Grivraj का मतलब होता है something that is impregnable. Now Rajgir, if you go to Rajgir, you will find that entire Rajgir is surrounded by 5 hills. So Rajgir is surrounded by 5 hills, and you can imagine during those days it was not easy for any enemy to cross the 5 hills and to enter into the center of the Magadhan Empire. So Rajgir was always a very naturally protected area. So therefore Rajgir emerged, rather it became a capital, also emerged as a major center of Magadhan Empire. Secondly, when they shifted the capital also to Patliputra, now Patliputra is also a very famous, another very popular area because it is also called as Jal Durg. Jal Durg. Because if you go to Patna, Patna is also surrounded by various rivers. Ganga, Son, Punpun, Gandak. Now these are rivers which surround the Patliputra area or Patna area of today. Ganga is there, river Son is there, Punpun river is there, Gandak river is there. So Patliputra was equally a Jaldurg. Now during those days, the naval forces were not so developed. None of them were having naval forces also, navy also. So obviously they could not cross the rivers during those era to enter to Patliputra so easily. So in that cell, their capitals used to be always highly protected, even geographically. That's when they emerged as a major power. Last but not the least, they were also supporter of trade and commerce. So economically, they were more wealthier, they were more prosperous than the other countries or others can say kingdoms of the contemporary era. Punch marked coins, PMC, is the first coin issued in ancient India. Punch marked coins were the first coins issued in ancient India. And they were issued in the 6th century BCE, especially under the Magadhan kingdom only. So you can see politically, geographically, economically, they were having advantages than others. Not only that, but even socio-culturally also, they were the people to prove their might to the entire community, entire society of that era. Now, let me tell you what is that socio-cultural factor. See, the socio-cultural factor was the people of Magad were treated as inferior in the social order, in the social hierarchy of the Brahminical social order. Magadhan and the Kirats, Magadhan and the Kirats, K-I-R-A-T-A-S, Kirats. Navik is a Navik. Magadhan and the Kirats were on the bottom of the 4 Varna order, considered to be a part of the Shudra order. Now why? Because I told you in one of my classes, Aryanization had reached to only the river Sadanira. I told you while discussing the later Vedic phase very clearly that the Aryans, they reached to the upper part of river Sadanira, which is today's modern Gandak. That is today region of Sitamarhi or Mithila. Till there only the Aryans reached or the Brahmins reached. Towards the south, it was considered to be a non-Brahminical zone, a zone resided by the Vaishyas and Sudras largely. All right. So these people, in fact, the Magdans and Kirats were treated very badly in the society. But for the first time, these people under the Haryak dynasty, or even you can say the so-called Nanda dynasty, they got for the first time to prove their might and to show to the Brahminical social order that they also have the power, also have the might to prove their, you can say, existence and the worth in the society. So that sort of spirit was there among the Magdan and Kirats to establish a very vast and strong empire so that no one can question them. No one can point finger upon them. Because even Chandragupta Maurya's origin is quite confusing. Because Mauryas or the Mauryas were basically the Shudra class people who were there in the area of Bihar at that particular point of time also. So obviously this Chandragupta Maurya also belonged to the same Shudra class only. Fine, that is how many historians have come to this conclusion. However, there is no any concrete evidence that what was the origin of Chandragupta Maurya and from where he has come out. But nevertheless, he definitely have been belonging or has been belonging to some lower Varna order already in society. So because of that factor also, these people wanted to show their worth in the society, and hence finally we see the emergence of the modern empire. Fine, that was done. All right. Now you see this next slide on your screen. 6th century BCE is not only known for the emergence of the Magadhan Empire, it is also known for the emergence of the Buddhism and Jainism in India. It is said that around 63 heterodox sects emerged in ancient India in the 6th century BCE. Point is, why and how? See, what is first of all heterodox sects? Heterodox sects are those orders, are those systems which develop as a challenge or as a reaction to orthodox or orthodoxy in the system or orthodoxy in the society. What is orthodoxy? Orthodoxy is a belief, is a concept that makes one believe in conservative approach, in high degree of ritualism, in non-scientific bent of, you can say, belief system. So orthodoxy does not allow you to think rationally. Orthodoxy stops you to think freely and rationally. Now here, 63 heterodox sects emerged in the 6th century BCE. Why? How? So let me first of all answer why. The why is to be understood in the context of, I told you that by the beginning of 6th century BCE already, there was a high degree of materialism that entered into the Indian society. You can simply understand in the wordings of Dr. D.N. Jha Now, D.N. Jha happened to be my teacher, so I've been privileged to learn some history from him directly. So, see, D.N. Jha has written a book on ancient India, and what he writes there, that even the price of a dead mouse, even a price of a dead mouse was there in the era of 6th century BCE. That was the level of, you can say, monetization or commercialization that increased at that particular point of time. So, in other words, materialism was at its peak. Materialism was at its peak at that particular era, in that particular era, in fact. That's the first thing. Second, the Brahminical dominance was becoming highly suffocating for many new class of people, especially like Srishtis and Shatavahas. So Brahminical dominance was becoming suffocating for many new class of traders and businessmen, because in this system they didn't have any scope to emerge on the social ladder, and it was essential for them to conduct the sacrifices, to conduct the rituals in the form of sacrifices, to only seek the religious solace. All right. So one can't seek religious solace, or religious affairs can't be done if you don't conduct sacrifice. Sacrifice of animals. It was a mandatory exercise for conducting any ritual. With the death or the birth or the marriage, it was essential for a society to conduct these rituals. All right. So everyone was supposed to conduct rituals, including with the Vaishya and the Sudras. And these rituals had to be conducted only by the Brahmins, not anyone else. So only Brahmins can be the priest, no one else. So obviously you can see in this particular manner, there was a high dominance of the Brahminical society in the system, and therefore, as a reaction to that, heterodox sects emerged in the 6th century BCE. So the emergence of heterodox sects was primarily because of two reasons. One was a reaction against the Brahminical orthodoxy, and one was a reaction against the high degree of materialism of the 6th century BCE itself. There was also an emergence of a class called Gehpatis. Gehpatis in the 6th century BCE itself. And these Gehpatis were the landholders. They were the landholders who have the lands in their possession, who are conducting the agriculture practices on their land, who are not only practicing agriculture but also commercializing the agriculture, earning revenue and wealth through agriculture also. So even they were not getting the recognition from the society, especially from the Brahminical dominant society at that particular point of time. So therefore, in the backdrop of these all things, we see the emergence of the Buddhism and Jainism took place in India at that particular point of time. Now see on the screen, this was a story that we were discussing about, in fact. So I told you about Magad Ajasatru era altogether. Nanda's Magadhan Empire completely. And this is the heterodox sect. Now you can see on the screen. There are various heterodox sects emerged. Of course, out of them, Buddhism and Jainism were the most popular and most, we can say, permanent in India, in fact. So it emerged as the most popular order from 6th century BC itself. But besides that, even Ajivikas were another heterodox sect. So even Ajivikas were another very major heterodox sect, and you can understand there were some good followers also of Ajivikas. All right, for example, the son of Chandragupta Maurya was Bindusar. So he was a follower of Ajivikas. Chandragupta Maurya, he followed Jainism, but his son was a follower of Ajivikas. All right. On the other hand, Ashoka, a son of Bindusar, no, he was a follower of Buddhism. So see, none of them were follower of Brahmanism. Why? Because understand the idea. Idea was the emergence of the Magadhan Empire was a reaction to Brahmanism also. All right. So this is exactly the politics also of Bihar today. I mean, if you observe the politics very minutely, you will understand it very thoroughly that in the politics of Bihar in the last 3 or 4 decades, who are the rulers? They are not the Brahmins. They are not neither the Brahmins nor the Kshatriyas. They are primarily from the Vaishya and Sudra class. And in Bihar, you have the dominance of this class only. That's a fact. Whether you take the example of OBC or SC, ST, they dominate in Bihar politics today also. They see the example of Lalu Prasad Yadav or Nitish Kumar, they all belong to OBC. They're not the Brahmins or Kshatriyas. They are basically mainly from Vaishya class. So the politics of Bihar can easily be understood from the historical background right from the ancient time.
Sir,
Yes.
this just came to me. अभी जब बिहार elections हो रहा था, तो there was some article. I saw it in the news coverage about the idea of Mahadalits, and Nitish Kumar had given a particular group the status of Mahadalits. So this also has some connection, like
Yes,
we
yes,
can
exactly.
say historical connection.
That is the connection. No, the entire politics of Bihar is fought on the issue of the politics of Dalit. So in Bihar, it is difficult for any forward class people to come as a chief minister in near future. I mean, the idea is people were there also even in the after India's independence. It's not like they were not the chief minister from Brahman or Kshatriya class or let's say the upper class there in Bihar. But that remained only till 1960s and 70s. Because by 1980s or early 1990s, there was a social mobility that took place in Bihar very explicitly. And under social mobility, the emergence of the OBC and SC, STs can be seen not only in Bihar but across India, also in UP. Fine. So that is a fact. So in that manner, of course, you can see the politics. If you analyze politics of Bihar and UP particularly, you will realize that there has been a factor behind these all politics because of the ancient history of these all territories. Fine. So exactly that way you have to understand that Ajivikas also was one of the reaction to the Brahminical dominance in the society. And what was the Ajivikas philosophy? It was Niyativad. They were also called as Niyativad, which means that everything is decided by the fate. Me and you can't decide anything. And even in our approach also at times we also become Niyativad. So in other words, we also become Ajivikas at times. When we say it had to happen, so it happened. All right. So we all are Ajivikas in some of the other manner. ठीक है, भले हम जानते नहीं थे, लेकिन this is what actually we have also been following the philosophy of Ajivika in our life as well. So the point is, the founder of this Ajivika sect is considered to be Nanda Vacha. So this question can be asked in prelims that who was the founder of Ajivikas? You can see on the screen. According to Buddhist records, Nanda Vacha was considered as the founder of Ajivika sect, and he was succeeded by Kisa Samkicha and also Makali Gosala. All right. So Makali Gosala was considered to be the greatest of the Ajivikas because he became popular. Reason being that Gosala is said to have met also with Lord Mahavira. All right, and he had a fight with Lord Mahavira on their philosophies, in fact. So Lord Mahavira and Gosala were contemporary. Fine. So he happened to meet Mahavira in Nalanda, and they remained as a friend for 6 years, and they started propagating the ideas for 6 years. But finally, he got separated from Mahavira, and Gosala, he went to Sravasti, where he started patronizing the people out there. A rich potter woman called Halahal was, of course, patronized by him, and this there only he started propagating his messages, in fact. So Gosala Makhali Putra, or Gosala Makhali Gosala, both are same, in fact. So he was considered to be the real propounder of Ajivikaism or Ajivika sect across India. All right. So their basic philosophy was to propagate the Niyativad, because they used to believe that nothing in this world could be changed, as everything was predetermined. And everyone has to pass through a series of transmigrations to put an end to a pain. That was the philosophy of the Niyativad school. All right. And exactly you can see on the screen that there were other scholars also in Ajivikas like Purana Kassap, Pakud Kachayan. They all were also the scholars of Ajivikas only. They also joined Ajivikas after death of Gosala and infused new life to it. So you might be asked a question that which among the following happened to be a propagator of Ajivikas in India or Ajivikas in ancient India. These names are important for all of you. So Purana Kassap, Pakud Kachayan, even Makhali Gosala Putra, they all are important for all of you, whether they belong to Ajivikaism or not. So they all actually belong to Ajivikaism only. Fine. That is what actually is the concept of the Ajivikas that became quite popular at that point of time. The Ajivikas were also popular in South India. You can see here, this question can also be asked to you, that there were also Ajivikas in South India, but the Cholas were basically Saivites. Cholas were mainly Saivites. So therefore, they also imposed taxes on the Ajivikas in South India. This question can anytime be asked to you in prelims. The question can be asked to you that which South Indian kingdom imposed taxes on Ajivikas? So the answer is Cholas. Why? Because Cholas were Saivites mainly. In terms of Brahminical order, they used to propagate the idea, and this actually have been there to impose this tax also. There is one sect that emerged in India before, around the emergence of Buddhism, Jainism also. That is Ajivikas. Then another sect that is called as the materialism, or that is also called as the idea of living a materialist life in ancient India as well. Lokayat Vad इसे कहते हैं. All right, so Lokayat Vad, I'll talk about that. But let us say Ajit K. Skambalin, he was the most important, the most popular propagator of the materialistic philosophy at that point of time. According to him, that there is no life after death. That's what actually you have to believe into, and you need to enjoy your life to a maximum limit. In fact, all right, that's what actually was the philosophy of materialism. So Lokayat actually has derived the idea from materialism only. Lokayat signifies materialistic thought, and Charvak was another very famous materialistic philosopher. Charvak. So Charvak and Ajit K. Skambalin are said to have established the Indian materialism as a formal philosophical system. All right, and they believed always in that even if you take loan, but you live your life with fullest enjoyment. Don't worry about the future. तो इस जन्म में लोन लेके भी, पैसे लेके भी आप एंजॉय कर लो लाइफ, उधार लेके भी आप घी पी लो. That what actually is the philosophy of Lokayat, in fact. All right, that is how this philosophy also became popular along with Buddhism and Jainism. But the most remarkable development was the rise of Buddhism and Jainism, because they became not only the religion of India, rather it became religion of the world afterwards. So Buddhism and Jainism. The founder of Buddhism, of course, Gautam Buddha, who lived between 566 BCE to 480 BCE. All right, and he was born in the, of course, royal family, but he was, I mean, of course, he was prophesied that he will become a great preacher if he encounters old man, ill man, a corpse, and an ascetic. These questions are asked to you, that what all elements had to be encountered to, I mean, Siddhartha to change his mindset altogether. So it was primarily old man, ill man or dead body, that is corpse, and an ascetic, that is sadhu. So if he sees these all four things, he will realize that behind every suffering there's a one common problem, that is desire. So if you control your desire, there will never be a suffering for you. And how to control desire? For that, in that purpose, for in that process only, Siddhartha got transformed into Buddha, that is enlightened one. So I told you in one of my classes, it's not Buddha, it is Buddha. So Buddha has become Buddha informally for all of us. All right. So that is enlightened one, that is matured one, in fact, that way. So Buddhism got promoted after demise of Lord Buddha only, especially by these all councils conducted in the name of Buddhism to propagate it, like Ajasattu called the first council, presided by Mahakashyap. This council was called in Rajgir in the Sataparni cave. These questions are asked to you in prelims. The first council was conducted by Ajasattu as the first fact. Second fact, it was presided by Mahakashyap. Third fact, it was conducted at Rajgiri. And the fourth fact was that during this council only, the Sutta Pitak was drafted. Teaching of Sutta Pitak was drafted. Sutta Pitak, that is teaching of Buddha, was drafted. And there were three Pitaks divided in this particular meeting only. Then second council was called in Vaishali in Bihar under the patronage of King Kalasok. It was presided by Samakami. Then the third council was called in Patliputra under the patronage of Asoka, presided by Mogliputra Tissa. And the fourth was in the era of course, Kanishk. So Kanishk of Kusana Empire, it was conducted in Kundalwan in Kashmir. And it was presided by Vasumitra. And Ashwa Ghosh was his deputy there in the fourth council. This council is important because here only Buddhism got divided to Mahayana and Hinayana. There's the fourth Buddhist council for all of you. Then Jainism. The Jainism also came into prominence in the same era, 6th century BC, with Lord Mahavira becoming the most popular propagator of Jainism in India. So he happened to be the 24th Tirthankar. Tirthankar, that is the preachers of Jainism, in fact. So Jainism was already in existence. Philosophy of Jainism was already in existence. He only started propagating and making it quite popular at that particular point of time. So he was born in Kundalgram near Vaishali, and that is how his story started. that Mahavira also became 24th Tirthankar and started propagating the messages of Jainism. Jaina simply means the conqueror of desire, just like Buddha. So again, the idea was same. Both of them wanted to teach the disciples how to conquer their desire and how to live a life very simple with honesty and without any, you can say, violence in their life. That is how these all actually happened to be there. The point is that a question can also be asked to you. Every Jaina Tirthankar was associated with some symbol. What was the symbol of Mahavira? So Mahavira was having a symbol of a lion. Like Neminath was having a symbol of snake. Neminath. Nemi. Neminath. N for nest. Neminath was having a symbol of serpent. Bahubali. Bahubali was the son of Rishabhnath, the first Tirthankar of Jainism. Alright, so his big statue is there in Karnataka.
सर
हाँ,
सर बिहार में लाइन कहाँ से आ गए? मतलब ये गुजरात से कांटेक्ट था होगा इनका?
बिल्कुल, तभी उसके बाद ही इसको मिला, क्योंकि वल्लभी में काउंसिल होता है. Next slide is that only.
Okay.
See, we have already discussed about these all the things in the class of art and culture only, so we're not discussing it again. All right. So see this particular Vallabhi. That is how Vallabhi session was held in Gujarat, in fact. All right. Second Jana Council was held in Vallabhi in Gujarat. So here only this all particular compilation of the Angas and Upangas were done. Jana Council was called in the second time in Gujarat, Vallabhi. First Jana Council was called in Patliputra. All right, presided by Sulbhadra. Second was called in Vallabhi around 512 AD or CE, presided by Devadri Shamasram. This question is asked to you, that who was the president of Second Jana Council?
सर आप बाहुबली के बारे में क्या बोल रहे थे? उनका भी कोई सिंबल?
Bahubali is the son of Rishabhnath, who also has been depicted as the powerful man.
Okay.
All right. So this is how they started. So that was the importance of Jana Council for all of us. Fine. So this is how we see the 6th century BCE started emerging, or rather started developing into all these several sects. Economic changes were witnessed, like coins were used for transactions, etc. Towns emerged, Buddhism, Jainism emerged. All right. Not only that, but even the Mahajanpadas started changing into the Magadhan Empire, Magadhan Kingdom altogether. These all changes started taking shape at that particular point of time, along with even the contact with the foreigners also increased in India at that particular point of time. Like Persian and Macedonian invasions also happened in the northwestern part of India. Already we have discussed Macedonian invasion in the form of the Alexander the Great. But even afterwards, we have we have the series of invasions that took place on the northwestern frontier of India from the Persia. So Persian and Macedonian have been fighting with each other. All right, and on that basis, only the you can see the movie called 300. If you've seen a movie of Hollywood, 300, that was shown in the context of Persian and Macedonian invasions only. All right, so they have been fighting regularly with each other to dominate over the empire. So, of course, with this only, India has also been called, or the people of India was also called as a Hindu from their interaction only. All right, so it is how Hindu as a word was used, and then from Hindu it became also, Hindu or India from the Greeks. So Hindu as a word was given by the Persians, and India as a word has been given by the Greeks to us. All right. So India or Hindu as a name that we today use, it actually has been a gift of the foreigners only. Because we never call ourselves as Hindu or India. They called, and then finally we started realizing that we are Hindu and we are Indians in that way. So impact of Persian contact was in the context of various new cultures developed in India, various new cultural imprints developed in India, like Kharosthi script, Aramaic script. This all actually got developed due to the contact of the Persian only with India. Because these all things will be useful in the context of understanding the modern empire. Because the modern scripts have been found in all these languages, all these scripts. Not only Brahmi, but also Kharosthi, also Greek, also Aramaic. So a question can be asked to you in prelims that in which all scripts the modern edicts have been found. So you should remember it was found in all the scripts. Of course, Brahmi, the most commonly found. Then you have also Kharosthi, we have also Aramaic, we have also Greek. So these all the scripts have been found of the modern edicts or the Asokan edicts. This all happened due to the influence of the Persian culture only in India. Exactly, the influence can also be seen in the context of the construction of pillars in the modern empire. We'll have to discuss it in the modern case only. So the pillars that was constructed in India, it was also influenced by the Persian culture only. All right. So till here, we'll keep it today because the next class we'll discuss the modern empire alternately. Or else next class we'll discuss the modern empire and then the post-Maurya and then Gupta and post-Gupta. So probably 2 or 3 more classes will require to complete this session altogether. That is ancient India session till post-Gupta time. All right. So only one more class afterwards I'll take only on discussing the South Indian history. Because I've not taken up South Indian history in this entire duration. I'll take it separately. The history of South India. Fine. So 3 more classes will require to complete the ancient Indian classes altogether.
Sure.
Tell me.
Sir, I had a question that, sir, throughout across the culture, we see that gold is accepted as the most important form.
Yes.
It's like a psychic unity of mankind, sir. So how did gold emerge so important and not other metals?
Idea is, see, first of all, gold always has very attractive properties. It is highly malleable, highly ductile. It can easily be shaped in any particular form. It can remain in almost, you can say, extreme temperatures also till it does not melt in that way. And most importantly, it is rarely found also. Having shiny, lustrous, you can say, color of this gold has always been the issue of attraction for the human being. And since it has not been found everywhere, found only in some pockets, so obviously, if something is found very rarely, it always become a very coveted item for everyone. All right. So in that manner, gold actually has acquired huge importance. They started acquiring huge importance for the entire humankind gradually. Right. That is how it actually emerged as a major bullion in the world.
And sir, one more question, sir. Sir, for example, you said that Magad was based around South Bihar, so we can consider Jharkhand as well. So, sir, so many years of rule of civilized empire, and so how did not the tribes become, included in the fold? They become Aryanized, and
Actually, the Magdans were never the people from the Aryan clans. That is a fact. All right. So therefore, I just told you the Magdans and the Kirats were treated at the lowest rung in the four Varna order.
sir, I meant the Gonds, the
Now, I got your point. Idea is that why these all tribal people was not brought into the fold of the Magadhan Empire. See, the idea is that they have never been. This has never been a part of the modern Magadhan policy to actually proselytize someone to be a part of their own area. So they never went for proselytization. In fact, in that way, unlike what was done by the Brahminical order at that particular point of time. All right, that is the point. In fact, right. Any other question that you have?
Sir, sir, I'm just curious, sir. I hear a lot of history about Odisha, sir. So did the proselytizing of Buddhism occur after Kalinga War, do you think, sir?
Yes, it has started, in fact, because of course we can see there's no doubt about it to say that Buddhism was definitely a religion to proselytize others. All right. So it was one of the earliest religions which actually believed in proselytization, in fact. So therefore, when Ashoka started promoting Buddhism, it was basically in the context of having more and more followers to come into the fold of Buddhism. So in that way, even in not only in Odisha but in the rest of the part of India, Buddhism started spreading, and from India also it started spreading to other parts of Southeast Asia. So that is how Buddhism became an instrument of personalization for many of the rulers, starting from the era of Ashoka only. That's the point. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. So we can conclude the class today. All right. So I'll be taking the class at this hour only. So you will have to be with me. In fact, for these all 3-4 more classes for ancient India. So in this month, I am slightly engaged. So that's the reason why. In the meanwhile, of course, I will be conducting your test also very soon. Probably this Sunday, I will be conducting a test either on quality or maybe on current affairs. So I'm discussing with Nikhil sir. So whichever test would be prepared, I would let you know beforehand, in fact. So you need to start working also on your polity and current affairs part. Because we have conducted a test on history, geography, economy, all right. Then polity is left with, in fact. So polity test will be conducted. And also probably the classes will also start of polity by 12th or 13th of this month. All right. So that is how polity classes will also there. Around 12 classes will be there to discuss with you the major topics of polity from the prelims point of view. Okay. And I hope these classes are going well. That is environment and ecology.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then it's all right. And you are covering the thing, I mean, syllabus thoroughly. Geography, economy, polity will be done. History is being done. The environment is already being done. So in fact, through this particular manner, you will be able to complete almost 80 to 90% of syllabus. The rest of the things that you have to cover, it is actually going to be covered through the current affairs. So you have to keep a tab on current affairs thoroughly. With this, your preparation would be sound. And at the same time, you have to keep the question bank with you. I mean, because that would give you always a direction. So question bank of prelims should always be with you, in fact. Without seeing the question bank, you should not work. You should study anything, nor you should prepare anything. In fact, so question bank is going to be your main, you can say, guiding lines for the another couple of months. In fact, so question bank you keep every day to see every day. In fact, because that will give you a direction. Right. So ये काम करना है आप लोगों को जरूर से, ठीक है? So I will tell you about what test we are going to conduct. So probably either the polity or current affairs test will be conducted very soon. Fine. So now you start working on that also. ठीक है?
सर एक चीज पूछनी थी मुझे,
हाँ,
लाइक जो आर्यन आपने बोला था कि वो वेव्स में आए थे, तो जब अलेक्जेंडर ने इन्वेट करा था उस टाइम पे भी मतलब देयर आर अ लॉट ऑफ स्टोरीज ना कि देयर आर इंडिया में ट्राइब्स व्हिच स्टेड बैक, दे वर एक्चुअली सोल्जर्स फ्रॉम अलेक्जेंडर्स आर्मी. So can his invasion wala phase also be considered a part of Aryans settling down in waves in India?
No, no. Aryans so already had entered India by the time of the Vedic era itself. Now, Alexander invasion happened only in the 4th century BCE.
Yes, sir.
And Aryans had already settled down in India by the 6th century BCE itself. They had now permanently settled down in India. So there was no any new race of Aryans coming to India in that way. But it was the Indo-Greeks or the Greeks which entered India who later on transformed into Indo-Greeks.
Okay.
So idea is the Greeks also made India as a permanent land to settle down. So what we see in the post-modern phase, after the decline of the Mauryas, when the centralized empire got declined, then they started entering into Indian land in another round of waves.
Okay.
All right, so Indo-Greeks will also enter, Sakas will also enter, Parthians will also enter. So these all people start entering into India. Therefore, India actually started developing into a multicultural, multi-religious country that way.
Okay.
Fine. So we'll talk about
Thank you,
that
sir.
also. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
See you then again. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Good night.